Hello, and welcome back to another Cabincast Ramble with Oliver and Tam.
Hello.
We are here with more Steven Universe. This is episode 41, and we are continuing where we left off, more so than usual, because we're always continuing where we left off to some extent. But we are here with Bismuth. Again, this is part 2. Slightly longer, slightly shorter.
Since we ended a little bit after the halfway mark, this bit is a little shorter, but it's more sort of dense.
Yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, last time we dealt with all the startup, and we went to
The Forge.
we went to the forge. We got to the breaking point, didn't we?
We just finished where they are watching Lonely Blade on television.
That was it. And we saw Rose's sword, and that was when we left it.
Yeah, so, we ended off where Bismuth wants to see, potentially whether Steven is able to fight. And then he takes out Rose's sword to show her that he does have a weapon, although that's normally Connie's weapon of choice.
Yeah, it's not what he uses.
But as it turns out, Bismuth made this sword.
Indeed.
And then we get this sort of... This is sort of the last part, the last sort of thematic half, I guess, of this is basically two scenes.
Mm-hmm.
There's this bit where Bismuth sort of speaks about how great Rose was at some point, with some undertones, and then it goes over to the forge after that. And interestingly, this bit is sort of that blue color of nighttime, and the other one is sort of red color.
Yeah, reddy orange is very true, very true.
Yeah. But basically, what she talks about is how she met Rose Quartz. That, Bismuths are sort of construction workers. They're builders.
Yeah.
They build the spires. They build the sea spire that we saw in Cheeseburger Backpack. They might have built like the arenas that we saw.
Probably the Sky Arena and all the other places.
Sky Arena, yeah, all of those sorts of things, likely built by Bismuths. But then, at some point, she came across Rose Quartz, who supposedly is not just, a normal quartz soldier, but is different, is like breaks the mold. And the idea here is that Rose Quartz is different because she made a decision on her own. And you're not normally supposed to make decisions on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, while the part of being a quartz is not true, the part where Rose makes the decision on her own to leave and become a rebel, basically, that is true.
Indeed.
And so that's why I think perhaps Bismuth's reaction, to all the way down into season 5, maybe isn't quite as bad as like Garnet's, for example.
Yeah.
Because Bismuth's respect is the fact that she made a decision against the Homeworld Authority.
To jump ahead, Bismuth's whole problem was the fact that Rose was like, no, we're not using that. And the reason that they weren't using that is because you can't shatter Pink Diamond when you are Pink Diamond. So once she gets that, she's like, well, that makes sense. it was still rose quartz pink diamond that showed Bismuth that you could be something else.
It's true.
It's not the same as it was for how it misled Garnet, and we will come to that, and it'll be a very interesting discussion.
Absolutely. That's a long way in the future.
That's
But
a long way away for now.
right now, Bismuth is obviously Bismuth. Like, her big thing is that she really hates the elites.
Yeah.
We talked about this last episode.
Yes.
But the other part is that she really cares about the sort of the self-determination aspect of the crystal gems ideology.
Mm-hmm.
People that gems should be able to choose who they want to be and what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Rose asked Bismuth what she wanted to build is what's important. And that's why potentially the breaking point is like a corruption of those ideals, because obviously if you want to shatter the diamonds, you're going to have to shatter the diamonds' armies,
Mm-hmm.
which means you're not giving them a chance to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it was a breaking point in the relationship, not just between Rose and Bismuth, but between Stephen and Bismuth, and between the story before season 3 and the story after season 3.
Indeed. And of course, the fact of it is that what ends up happening when the crystal gems do actually manage to win, is that the diamonds do something pretty much just as bad with the corrupting light that they blasted Earth.
It's true. They eventually, or at least that's the story, they did shatter Pink Diamond. I don't know whether Bismuth was told this.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, like, Pearl just said, we're all that's left.
Yeah.
But maybe they said it off camera.
Potentially.
I'm not sure. It would be definitely a good idea to say it.
Yep.
To say, hey, you know that thing about shattering the diamonds? To be fair, actually, the other crystal gems didn't know about this.
This is, true.
And Stephen isn't, like, hugely in the know about everything yet.
No.
But perhaps the ideal thing would have been, hey, we tried that. We tried shattering a diamond. Didn't work. They just corrupted everyone on Earth, except Amethyst, Rose, Pearl, and Garnet. Boy, howdy, that worked, huh?
Indeed.
But then we get the little pep talk from Bismuth that Stephen isn't Rose. You know, this is sort of what Stephen wanted to hear now. That Stephen doesn't have to be Rose. Stephen can be someone better than Rose. We start to get the inkling of sort of ideas of who Rose is. That Stephen can be himself. Unfortunately, what Bismuth thinks Stephen ought to be is not quite what Stephen wants Stephen to be.
With a great many people, indeed.
When it's sort of like, yeah, you can be whatever you want to be, as long as it's what I want you to be.
Yeah.
You know. And I suppose it was kind of like that with Rose, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know, obviously. It's very difficult to say. But Rose asked Bismuth what she wanted to build rather than what she wanted to do. Maybe I'm looking too far into this, into the wordings that Bismuth used, but maybe Bismuth wasn't quite given as much choice as she really thought. But then she did end up making weapons. And that definitely is the ultimate manifestation of choice and freedom, isn't it?
Yeah.
And armor, I'm guessing, since the armory was like Rose's secret armory that we saw in Lion 2.
Yep. Exactly.
and Rose's scabbard.
Mhm.
There is armor there, but we don't see any armor in the forge itself. Just weapons. So Bismuth brings Stephen to the forge,
Yes.
and we're starting to, in the anime where characters get sort of like a shadow over their eyes.
Yep. They do like that in Steven Universe.
They like that a lot with Bismuth as well. That happens a good little bit in this episode.
It does.
Now, his crucial like information. No one knew it was crucial information at the time. But looking back at it after any point during season 4, to be fair, I designed this sword for a fair fight. It can cut through a gem's physical form, but not destroying the gem. Now that is like the piece of evidence after the trial happens. That's like, we'll be like, yeah, okay, I see now. Since Blue Diamond says it was a sword, and it's like, no, that doesn't add up. It can't be. That can't be what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bismuth goes on to say that they need something different because Homeworld doesn't fight fair.
No.
Which is true. I mean, they corrupted the entire Earth and planted a geo-weapon inside it.
Yep.
I wouldn't call that fair.
Nope. I would agree.
And then the weapon that would have won the war, supposedly, the breaking point. Now.
Yeah. At first, Steven's like, yeah.
So cool. Indeed.
Which kind of is, but it's dangerous. I mean, it's interesting because obviously this is fantasy and it's a kids' show and everything, but the fact that there's been actually no death in this rebellion, is pretty amazing.
What do you mean?
Because there's been no shattering. It's like it's a rebellion and they're fighting back against the gems and they've proofed plenty of gems, but there's not actually really been any, again, the gems and humans are different, but if you think about like War of Independence or any of the French revolutions, anything like that, like hundreds of thousands of people die. Basically no one's died in this war between the crystal gems and Homeworld.
Is that true?
I don't know why it wouldn't be true.
I'm pretty sure you see, like, in the Strawberry Battlefield, you see shards of gems.
Do you?
And of course, the cluster is made up of the shards of fallen soldiers during the war.
That's a good point.
So definitely, but I imagine the crystal gems weren't the ones doing much shattering.
But sure,
because that was
yeah.
That might have been what was not fighting fair to Bismuth.
Yeah, at the very least, you might be right on that actually now thinking about it. But yeah, my point being, like, at the very least, as a rebellion goes, they are, in human perspectives, pretty peaceful.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Compared to the gems, it's like, what are you doing? You're going off and doing your own things, and you're fighting against the diamonds. It's horrendous. And it's like, yeah, this is the first time where it's like, this is actually a weapon we've made that will kill.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, interesting.
Well, since, like, the only way you can really kill a gem is by hitting it in its heart.
Exactly.
Yeah, Bismuth shows off the breaking point by obliterating a statue.
Completely annihilating a statue.
Exactly. And Stephen recoils in horror,
Mm-hmm.
proclaiming that that is the destruction of a person, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Stephen has talked to like fragments of gems before.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
When he talked to the cluster, for example. So I imagine he's like, well, hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
They're not really sort of gone.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, we know later that it's possible to heal a shattered gem. That Yellow Diamond does that, and also Stephen, with enough diamond essence.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gives it to Stephen, and he can't do
Yeah,
it.
he can't do it.
He doesn't want to. He starts crying, the little wimp.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Classic
giving
Stephen.
Romeo.
I've been rewatching the first season again. It's like, wow, what is this show?
It's a bit different.
It's a bit different. It's so freaking dark. A lot of the episodes and really creepy. But yeah, clearly still finding its rhythm. But yeah,
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's very different from like the pilot as well. So
yeah, that one's even more different.
I mean, that one's literally dark, as in the colors are darker.
Yeah, no, very true. Very true. Good point.
But and then we get the sort of philosophical argument. Obviously, in real life, this is a big sort of philosophical debate whether because I guess the rebellion is sort of counter to years of oppression, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is whether that's justified. But that's a big debate. But it's not as relevant when it comes to gems, because there's a big difference between a real rebellion for humans and one for gems.
Yes.
And that's that you can take a gem out of combat without killing them or harming them.
Mm-hmm.
You just poof them and then bubble them, and then they
Indeed.
are out of the game, basically.
Yep.
But with a person, if you
person,
shoot them or swing a sword at them, they'll have that injury
mm-hmm.
or be dead. And that's the difference. That's what
Mm-hmm.
makes
Yep.
makes the idea of shattering gems sort of so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
Even in sort of self-defense.
Yeah.
And that's where Bismuth's ideas go from being like not just the general sort of I think people should be able to rise up against and kill people. I'm not saying that. I mean, that's sort of the argument.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a different situation.
Yes.
Because there are other options.
Yes.
And Stephen sort of obviously he's not like I mean he's 13.
Mm-hmm.
he's not a philosopher, but he's right in his understanding that well hold on a second. There's something kind of wrong about this, especially when people are supposed to be able to choose what they want to do. That's not very crystal gem-like, not giving people a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Just killing them.
Yep.
Even though it is for the sake of that cause of making decisions, you're going against it by doing that.
Yep. Which, again, thankfully, he's still got some of that childlike naivety, because
He does.
if you're an adult, like, it's a whole different... It should be the same conversation, but with as a child who's not been to school, even more so.
True.
And is not really where it seems of like any of the terrible things that humans have done. Yeah, makes him very much be able to be like, stop I'm not sure I agree with this. Also, there's this weird, like, because I guess it's an extended episode, they've got this weird, like, chibi mid-episode card.
Yeah, it's sort of like well, they do that in anime a lot
Oh yeah, they do it
when
in
there's
anime
an
a
ad
lot and
break.
things, but I've never really seen it in Steven Universe. I don't think it comes up before.
I think it's because this was the, if you count like one of the shorts, if you count like that, it's the 100th episode, and they wanted to
Hmm.
do something special for it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this certainly is special.
It is.
And then, you know, obviously, Bismuth kind of starts to get a bit mad at that. And
Yeah.
it turns out that Steven's using exactly the same words that Rose used
Mm-hmm.
when she showed her the breaking point last
Mm-hmm.
time. And then Bismuth, understandably perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
thinks that Rose is lying about that, because Rose lies a lot.
Yep. Rose lies a lot.
So it's maybe not the most like irrational reaction to all of this. Doesn't mean it's right, but it's
Mm-hmm.
understandable that she'd be like, "Oh, you were lying.
Mm-hmm.
I see." And then we get the sad truth that this happened before.
Yep.
That Bismuth took Rose down to this secret basement to say, "This is the weapon that can end the
Mm-hmm.
war." And Rose fought Bismuth,
Mm-hmm.
won, obviously,
Indeed.
and put her in Lion's Mane to
Yeah.
be later unlocked by Steven, I guess.
Indeed.
Because everything there is sort of like for Steven.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where the tape was. So Rose expected Steven to free Bismuth.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously didn't expect it to go like the way it did.
Yeah.
So she didn't lock Bismuth up forever, only for 6,000 years.
Yep.
Which is a long time. And it's sort of understandable.
It's not as bad as
Bismuth's
to Spinel, but yeah.
not as bad as Spinel, no, because Bismuth didn't have any consciousness in the
She was
bubble.
not conscious, but she just straight up lied about what happened to Bismuth to everyone.
It's true. There's definitely good and bad sides here.
Yeah.
I mean, Rose could have done a lot worse if she hadn't
Yep.
put it in Lion's Mane. So I
Yep.
guess there's that. But yeah, Rose put Bismuth in Lion's Mane and never told anyone about it. Just said that she
Nope.
disappeared at some point.
Yep.
And you can understand Bismuth's anger,
Yeah.
especially since to Bismuth it only happened a day ago.
Yeah.
And she says that without the breaking point, they lost the war.
Mm-hmm. Which,
I mean,
yeah,
they lost a lot of soldiers.
it was a Pyrrhic victory at best.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of them were, yeah, like, Bismuth's friends.
Yeah, I think it's an
And
expression of her frustration, though, because they obviously
yeah,
technically didn't lose.
yeah.
But
she lost everything. She lost all this time,
yeah,
and
everything.
and it's all also it's just like it's all well and good. Stephen now being like, oh no, we can't use this when Stephen's not lost anything.
Yeah,
I mean, he never got to meet his mum, and he's got enough trauma of his own. But again, from Bismuth's perspective, she's lost all these people and all this stuff, and here's this, young kid being like, no, no, you can't do that.
yeah.
That's not
Bismuth was
right.
literally in a war a few days
Yeah,
ago.
exactly. And then she woke back up, and oh, she's gone. She didn't tell any of you about me. This is also her, but it's not. And now I'm doing
Also,
the
we
same
just
thing again.
like watch TV and play video games.
Yeah. Also, we do nothing. That's yeah.
It's
It's
quite
interesting.
a shock to the system.
Indeed. And again, it kind of goes into the you can be whatever you want to be, except when it goes against my plan. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, obviously, there's the argument for, well, obviously, this isn't, is this right? Is this not right? And obviously, you can't shatter yourself, like we get into later. But it is also a do as Rose says, not necessarily do as Rose does.
Yeah.
Diamond. But again, that's not all the time. It's almost like she's a complex character.
Yeah, it's good.
It is good. But yeah, it's a pretty pretty big battle that goes on.
It is. It's a good battle. Stephen gets the spiky shield back.
He does. He uses floating, he uses a bubble, he uses a spiky bubble. He uses super strength as well, because those things are not
They're not light.
light.
They're made of, well, solid stone that's been melted, turned into magma, and then super cooled.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it's hot like an oven in there.
Mhm.
So the ground is also hot. We
Mhm.
can see his sandal melts, and when he steps on the floor, he gets burnt.
Mhm.
And when her last sort of bit before getting defeated was, I would have taken the water home world and shattered the
Mhm.
diamonds.
Yeah.
I would have liberated everyone.
Mhm.
But of course, the question is, would it?
Would it? That is
There's
always.
plenty. There's plenty of examples of people overthrowing the government and
Mhm.
then sort of creating a new government that's the same as the old one.
The same or worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to say it can not be successful. There are occasions, but
Oh, absolutely.
yeah. No, exactly. It's hard to say whether that would have worked or not.
It is hard to say. In some ways, it sort of reminds me of, and I apologize, the White Fang from
No,
Ruby.
no, no, absolutely.
You know, obviously, we've got sort of, because Bismuth is black coded, right?
Yeah.
With dreadlocks, and I think the voice actor
I
is
think the
is
voice.
a person of color. I can't
Yes.
quite know who it is.
Mhm.
And it's the sort of the same idea that we see in Ruby,
Mhm.
where it's like, yeah, they're rising up against oppression, but maybe they're going a bit too far.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing in the thing with the faunus is it's the like the difference there is to humans is you are different, you are animals, we are going to put you in cages and we are going to treat you as such. And then the faunus being like, well, that's not fair. We're clearly sentient and we're just as much people as you.
Yeah,
And then some of them being like, well, screw you, we're gonna fight back and attack you. And then the humans be like, ah ha ha, see, we were right. You are animals and we're gonna put you in cages because you are monsters. And it's like completely ignoring all the fact that the humans do these things as well, because that's how the psyche works. And that's very,
yeah, of course.
very much. It's yeah. I mean, no, I really like the white fang stuff. I think it's really interesting. With what they do with that in Ruby. It's not perfect, but
It's definitely not perfect, but it is
definitely
pretty
not.
interesting.
But it's an interesting concept. And yeah, I mean, Adam in that obviously becomes more and more radicalized.
Yeah,
And Bismuth here, it again, it's not that kind of show. I guess she
of
reminds
course
me
not.
more. She reminds me more of Saw Gerrera. But that's a Star Wars person who um you'll be less aware of.
Yeah,
But they're a person who just gets more and more and more radicalized as their life goes on, and eventually they realize that actually this isn't. this isn't what they should be doing. There needs to be a change. You've seen Rogue One, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's the guy with the big afro who's like on all the like he saw it years ago, but he's like on all the like the machinery, has trouble breathing and everything, and
Oh yeah.
he says I will run no longer and get spoilers for Rogue One, I suppose. But basically, like you see him first in Clone Wars, and then you see him in. We're going to see him in Andor when that comes out. We see him in Bad Batch. We see him in Rebels, and his
Oh
whole
wow.
life he's just fighting from one oppressor to another oppressor to another oppressor, and just getting more and more like paranoid and jaded and hardline.
Yeah.
And so like you look at the Rebel Alliance, which obviously does kill people and stuff, but he's very much more on the just blow up this thing and cause havoc for the Empire however we can, and civilians, more fair game than the rebellion as a whole would like. But by the time of Rogue One, it gets to the point of it's time for something new. It's time for a new hope. Something different than what I've been doing, and that's one of the reasons why he lets himself die there. Obviously, Bismuth doesn't do exactly that, but she does, eventually realize to herself, okay, maybe the way I've been thinking of this isn't the way at this point that needs to be done. Yeah, we're gonna get more to that when we get Bismuth back a whole lot later.
I think by now it's kind of like a bit of a tired trope, the sort of the revolutionary group that takes it too far.
Yeah.
Since we've seen it in Ruby and Steven Universe and like Star Wars also, I guess. I'd like to see one that is good.
Again, we're not just here to talk about Star Wars because I can do that with Tom as much as I want. But it's not exactly that. It's just more a fact of in any revolution there is going to be a group
Absolutely.
who is more more violent or more hardline than others. Because he's still part of the Great Rebellion, and obviously the rebellion does do dark things. It's a rebellion. It's not all black and white.
Of course.
But yeah, no, compared to things like here with and in Ruby, where it is just like this whole basically organization. I mean, even there, it's still not, I guess, because like Blake's father and stuff were part of the White Fang.
They were.
They were like, hang on, guys, what are we doing?
They said it changed.
It changed and it became darker, and I mean, literally the flag changed and suddenly it was all like edgy and claw marks on. It's like, how can we make this clear that we mean business now?
Are we the baddies?
Yeah. Which again, it's just like, yeah, they're all really complicated issues, and the real life equivalents are also incredibly complicated, if not more so, because they're actually happening. But yeah, Bismuth wanted to make change and wasn't just denied this, but was then silenced and essentially erased.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you become something, your whole perspective changes, and that's like the way you view everyone. If you've been fighting to survive for so long,
yeah,
everyone becomes like a potential threat.
Yeah.
And that's not something you can let go of so quickly.
Indeed.
And perhaps this is another stage of learning for Steven's diplomacy skills, because like the whole series, it builds up to Change Your Mind, and it's all about like Steven learning these diplomacy skills, and this one is trying to understand the other person's perspective, because what would have probably worked is saying that shattering a diamond wouldn't have been a good idea logistically, taking Bismuth's perspective into account and using that to argue against her, instead of you trying to use a morality argument that she already disagrees with. And Steven learns that, and he uses it on White Diamond because he understands White's perspective, that she thinks that she's perfect, and says exactly what he needed to right at the end, and it works.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely.
But Steven wins this fight.
Steven wins this fight. could argue it's a bit contrived and a bit lucky, but it's a cartoon, and Stephen can't die because then we've not got a cartoon. So,
Yeah, he sort of
uh,
picks up the statue as Bismuth is
he
walking
well,
away and
he he
smashes it.
he grabs the statue which is thrown in, which is fine, that's fair enough, and smashes it into Bismuth. He still is like Bismuth, look out, which is kind of adorable. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but he smashes that,
He's still
but
a good
then
guy.
the sword's back on the ground now. It's like, where was that in all the other shots? Um,
Oh, I didn't notice that.
yeah, because I was like, I swear she gets stabbed with a sword, but I don't see it. So either I was blind, which is entirely possible, or I wasn't there. Now it is. Um, but yeah, Stephen, she's like, well, just shatter me, that'll be better. And again, Stephen's like, well, I'm not going to do that. No one deserves that.
Yeah,
And
unfortunate
yeah,
that makes
mm,
Bismuth more angry.
that does not help things. And so she goes to. I don't know if she'd actually necessarily do it, but she at least raises the breaking point with the intention of attempting to strike Stephen.
Yeah,
And
I
Stephen
think we
stabs her
can.
with the sword.
I think maybe. I think it's probably justified in saying she was probably going to do it.
She was
Like even if she wouldn't have actually done it, in a court of law, you could definitely say.
Stephen definitely has the right to self-defense in this situation, absolutely.
Yeah,
Um,
but
uh,
yeah,
but
Stephen draws the sword that was on the floor and shoots it
stabs.
through her body,
Mhm.
and then we get a like, we get a sort of a retelling again
Mhm.
that you know Bismuth is feeling like genuinely quite humiliated by the whole ordeal.
Mhm.
That it sort of feels like Rose doesn't care for people
Mhm.
outside of what they like have as value to her movement.
Our uses, yeah.
Yeah, and Stephen doesn't think that way.
No.
Stephen is like, no, I'll tell them because this is like important information.
Mhm. Yeah.
We
No,
already know from prior episodes that you can't keep such secrets.
no, it does not work. And she talks about how, yeah, if she was shattered, she wouldn't have to go on with knowing how little she mattered, and how, yeah, she was bubbled away, and what happened to her was kept from everyone. It's also interesting. Clearly, I don't know if it's just like sense of willpower or like the type of gem, but like with lots of gems, when they're hit by the sword, they're just like poof immediately. It could
Mm.
also just be for thematic effect, of course, but it's like a good few seconds after being like stabbed that Bismuth actually poofs.
Bismuth's strong.
Bismuth is strong.
Pearl is also strong, and we saw in Stephen the Sword Fighter that
Yeah.
like Pearl
Yeah.
managed a few seconds
Mhm.
at best, but Bismuth
Yeah.
is strong.
Bismuth is very strong, very cool, and yeah, Stephen finally does manage to kind of, at least in part, get through to her. Be like, I'm gonna tell them what happened, and yeah, Bismuth's like, well, then you really are better than her.
A little bit of acceptance,
Indeed.
but perhaps not enough to like go ahead and be unbubbled again.
No, exactly. We
I'm
we
not
need a
sure
bit
if
more.
I'm not sure if she would have wanted to form again if that
No,
were.
I don't think so. I think the way that she comes back is probably
Yeah. That's like later in season 5,
indeed.
which is a shame that we don't get to see her for a while. It
It
would have
is.
been really cool if we'd got a song from her
Yeah, before future.
because she sings in the movie a little
She sings
bit,
in the movie.
and that's
Yeah,
really good. She has a great
it
singing
is.
voice.
It's true. I'm not sure if that's the same voice actor at that point or not. I get a bit
Oh, it
confused
might
as
not
to,
be. I don't
but
know.
whoever does the voice does. Yeah, it's great.
It would have been cool to have a song in this,
But it would
but
have been cool.
it is a well paced episode already.
It's a well-paced episode, and like a song would have, like the whole point. Like Steven Universe is built to have songs in, obviously, and some of the songs are incredibly emotional. But I don't know. I almost feel like having a song in this episode with what it's trying to do would have like detracted
Maybe.
potentially as well. from because there's a slight uneasiness
It is uneasy.
throughout the whole episode. Even though it's like, oh, they seem great. It's like, but there's always a little bit in the back of your mind being like, but why were they in a bubble?
Why were they in a bubble? Why was the first thing they did get into a fighting stance?
Yeah, and yeah, that obviously they're clearly quite radical as well.
why
About
is
the
her
rebellion and
musical
everything.
instrument theme sort of a little bit menacing?
Yeah, exactly. So through the whole episode, you're going like, hmm, something seems off here. Which again, you could definitely translate in a song. There's absolutely ways of doing that. But yeah, I don't know if it would have quite fit. But I also agree that it is a shame that we don't get more singing from her because it is very cool.
Tell you what,
Um,
though, if this is what a 20-minute episode would have been like, they could have. It would have
yeah,
been
I mean,
interesting to wonder what Steven Universe would have
yeah.
been as a full length half-hour show.
I'd like some of it would have definitely been bettered by having full length,
Yeah.
and some of it probably didn't need it. Like in some ways, like we're watching Amphibia at the moment with Emily and Jamie,
All
and
right.
that's 20 minutes, but it's two 10-minute episodes.
Okay.
And that means that you get episodes mostly like this, but then they have the option, I think, to just use the full 20 when they need to.
Makes sense.
Which is quite interesting because, like, with Steven Universe and Adventure Time as well, except for a few exceptions in like this and some other episodes, it's always 10 minutes. And they can tell some brilliant stories,
They do.
but like Rebecca Sugar and people know what they're doing. They could also, and they do because the film's great, they can tell some longer haul stories as well. So it is interesting. And it is interesting to think about what could have potentially been if they were 20-minute episodes. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, Stephen comes back to the gems, and we don't see it, but explains what happened clearly because then we see them all holding. We see Pearl and Garnet holding Bismuth's bubble, and Amethyst is there too. But again, she clearly liked Bismuth. Was not as close.
Yeah.
They put it back with all the other bubbles now, so at least she's with all the others instead of off by herself.
A somber ending, but then it does show that they all, all the
Hmm.
gems really do care about him, and he cares about them.
Indeed.
He does tell them it would have been cool to see what their reaction would have been from the
Yeah.
whole story, because I
Hmm.
imagine that would have been a lot for Pearl.
Yes. And yet,
Um,
maybe no.
and yeah, maybe no, but yeah, it's such a great episode.
It's very good. It is definitely. I mean, like pretty much the whole rest of season 3 at this point is just good, 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 good. Because all we've got is beta Earthlings back to the moon and bubbled.
Oh, you said good a few too many times
I
there.
did. I think I was starting from like probably Alone at Sea. Honestly, nah, even Monster Reunion onwards, pretty much just good episode after good episode.
Yeah, this is a
Um,
great, great time.
indeed. Season 3 just generally, like I love season 2 because it's mainly Peridot and Peridot's my favorite character, but season 3 is just for the most part pretty solid throughout the whole thing. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Steven Universe is one of those shows that just keeps being good.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just
Indeed.
one of those episodes that I don't get
It's
bored of. It's great.
it's great. It's really cool to see the interactions with the gems at the start of the episode. It's got some great dialogue. It's cool to see Bismuth. She's a cool character. Um, yeah, and the music, the theme that she has is quite interesting. It's quite unique as well.
Very.
Um, but yeah, so that's that one. Next time we have Beta,
Beta,
which is
which is
part one again, but is actually split up into it's 2 episodes. It's not just like one big episode that's in 2 parts. It is 2 episodes that are closely connected, and that one is very interesting. Very
Absolutely.
interesting.
It's a great two-parter.
It is.
We get to see the sort of part of the resolution.
Indeed.
Jasper's arc,
We
as
start
it
to see
were.
the resolution of Jasper's arc. It kind of also resolves a bit of Amethyst's arc that we've had within this season. It also continues with Lapis and Peridot's thing a bit. So there's a whole bunch Beta and Earthlings does, actually, which is pretty interesting. But yeah. With that all being said, we'll have to wait until next time for that one. And until then, thank you for listening. And we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Bye!
Thank you for listening to this episode of Cabincast. For more episodes, go to www.cabincast.podbean.com or use the Podbean app. You can now also find us on iTunes and Pocket Casts under Cabincast and on YouTube. The uploads here are behind. Finally, you can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Cabincast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.